men are beginning to cross the threshold in lots of different ways. It may not look like a worldwide men's movement, but I see it.
Today's guest is Dr. Robert Glover, therapist, coach, and author of No More Mr. Nice Guy, a book that completely changed my life.
When women aren't attracted to us, or where our partner doesn't want to have sex with us, or our partner's angry at us, we tend to just double down and do more of what we've already been doing that doesn't work, because that's the only paradigm we know. It's the only roadmap we have.
There's no shortage of ways to get quick dopamine hits these days. And in the absence of having that vision, going out and, having a dent in the cosmos and being clear and rooted from that place, it's so much easier to pursue that next quick dopamine hit.
A few months back when I was going to Austin for the third time in 2024, my wife goes, "You sure you don't have a girlfriend in Austin?" I go, "No, I got a lot of guy friends in Austin."
With over 40 years of experience, Dr. Glover has helped thousands of men build healthier relationships, experience deeper intimacy, and live with greater purpose.
But if you made a commitment to a group of guys to say, okay, for 30 days, I'm not looking at porn, or for 30 days, I'm not scrolling social media, or for 30 days, I'm getting to the gym, and you've made that commitment, and maybe they're even asking you to check in with them on a daily basis, you're fucking going to show up, and then you're going to get to that 30 days and go, 30 more.
This is a conversation I've been looking forward to for a long time. I'm here with Dr. Robert Glover, and I've been a big fan of your work for many years now, and it's changed the way I show up personally for myself, and how I show up in a relationship as entirely transformed. And it's given me a language to patterns that I didn't even realize I was repeating. And it's been profound for me. So it's an honor to have you on the show. And I'm curious, for those who are unfamiliar with your work, what is the core idea behind No More Mr. Nice Guy? And what problem were you really trying to solve when you wrote it?
No, I was trying to solve my own problems and my own marriage, and a wife that was threatening to leave me if I didn't get help. That's the problem I was trying to solve. So I'll just start with that. I was in my second marriage, and I'd always prided myself as being a nice guy, i.e. different from my father, who was, moody, self-focused, selfish, demanding, kind of treated my mother like the patriarchal, slave that she was. And she was very codependent, and she raised me to be different from my father. She told me that when she was raising me as a boy. I grew up during the angry feminism of the 60s and 70s, where every man's a rapist, and erection's a sign of aggression. So I didn't want to be that bad man. And I also was raised fundamental Christian, went to a Christian college, got 2 degrees in religion. And, I was just thought if I just treat everybody well, be different than all the jerks I'd heard women complain about, including my mother, then I would be liked and loved and get my needs met. Now, I didn't realize that there were a lot of consequences of that paradigm, that path, until much later in life. But so I was about 3 years into my second marriage, and my then wife said to me, she said, "Everybody thinks you're such a nice guy, but you're not." She says, "I can't trust you. You don't tell me the truth. I don't know what you're thinking. I don't know what you want. You're passive aggressive. I think everything's fine, and then you blow up." She says, "You need to get help. If you don't get help, I'm leaving." And I thought, well, you're the one who's angry all the time. You don't like yourself. You never want to have sex anymore. You're always in a bad mood. I give you everything, you want. It's never enough. Okay, I need to get help. Yeah, and so I didn't want to lose that relationship. It was my second marriage, and I didn't want it to end. And she was very attractive, so there's a lot of motivation there to make it work. And I went to therapy trying to figure out why being a nice guy didn't make my wife appreciate me and want to have sex with me. And luckily, I landed in some really good places. I landed in a 12-step group for sex addicts, because my wife said, "You're a sex addict." Well, just because I wanted to have sex with my wife didn't make me a sex addict. I found out I wasn't having enough sex to be a sex addict, but it was just the perfect place to land. It was really my first men's group, because it was all guys. And what was beautiful about that particular situation was, once I realized, okay, I'm not a sex addict, but this is a good place to just talk about shit that I never talk about. So everything, I'd go to these groups. I'd look forward to them. They met like at 5 or 6 in the morning, and I'd look forward to it because for the first time in my life, I just started sharing stuff, thoughts, feelings, actions, impulses that I never shared with anybody. I just kept in 'cause I'm a nice guy. I can't even look at that stuff inside, right? It's not there's some shadows in there. There's some darkness. So, I mean, and so the worst thing that ever happened, I'd share stuff in this group and guys would go, "Thank you for sharing, Robert."
Mm.
Yep, that's it. I go, "Oh, that's kinda cool." I can just talk about all this stuff and nothing bad happens. I got into therapy, started working with a therapist, working around some of my childhood family patterns that had led to this, lack of boundaries, going along to get along, trying to be different from my father, trying to be different from bad men. And then I landed in a men's group. A friend told me about a group he was in, led by a woman therapist who'd written some books on sexual shame. And I was in that group 5, 6 years, maybe.
Mm.
So really did a lot of my work around connecting with men, um, making my needs a priority, practicing boundaries, releasing sexual shame. And it was during that time that I started and went to work on writing No More Mr. Nice Guy. And how that came about is that, when I'd started doing my own nice guy work, I went into therapy thinking being a nice guy was a good thing. A little while down the road, I thought, maybe it doesn't serve me well. I was a marriage and family therapist. And so guys were coming to me for therapy with their wives, their girlfriends, by themselves, saying, I'm a nice guy. I'm one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. I treat my woman better than her ex. I'm raising her kids. They go to private school. I buy her whatever car she wants. We go on nice vacations. I do everything around the house. It's never enough. She's never happy. She never wants to have sex anymore. When's it going to be my turn? Right? I thought, wow, I can finish these guys' sentences for them. You're nodding your head like maybe you've thought or said those things before.
In there.
So I started probably almost 30 years ago, maybe longer. My first nice guy, No More Mr. Nice Guy men's group. We met every other Wednesday. So Wednesdays, I just started writing. I wrote lessons, chapters to give to these guys what I was learning about what I came to call nice guy syndrome. And the guys in my groups, and I started another group, and then their wives and girlfriends are saying, Robert, you need to write a book. You need to go on Oprah. This could be a bestseller. There's a lot of guys out there that need this book. And so I kept writing about 6 or 7 years, and eventually turned into a book. Took about 3 years to get it published. A lot of publishing companies said, Robert, we like your book. It's well written, but our marketing department says men won't buy a self-help book. And I said, you don't understand these men. And how are they going to buy a self-help book if you never publish it? All right. For several years now, the book's been bringing in annual 6-figure royalty checks, getting bigger every year. So apparently men buy self-help books. And apparently there's a lot of nice guys out there that are buying the book. So basically a nice guy the way I define it, is a man who at a very early age, childhood, 3 weeks old, 3 months old, 3 years old, 13, started emotionally internalizing a belief that there's something wrong with them. They're not good enough. They're not lovable. They're bad. That's called toxic shame. And so from that emotional belief that not being good enough or being bad, nice guys try to do 2 things. One is they try to become what they think other people want them to be liked and loved and get their needs met. So we're basically chameleons trying to just, okay, you're not in your head when I say that. I'll keep saying that. Oh, you smiled. I'll keep doing that too. But the second thing we're doing is trying to avoid anything that might get a negative reaction. So if you kind of scowled at me or kind of crossed your arms or looked angry, oh, I better not go there. I better reframe what I meant to say there because you didn't like it. And so there's no authenticity. There's no me inside of me, right? I'm just I'm codependent. I'm borrowed functioning. If you approve of me, I'm okay. If you need me, I'm great. If you don't need me, if you don't approve of me, if you don't like me, well, I got to fix that. I got to do something different. And so because of that lack of authenticity, lack of integrity, lack of honesty, lack of transparency, lack of an internal locus of control, internal direction in life, nice guys are often anything but nice. We are passive aggressive. We are indirect. We are dishonest. We can carry a lot of frustrations and resentments that build up till they blow up into what my ex-wife called victim pukes, where it just all comes out. All those conversations we've been rehearsing all just come out at once. It's not pretty. Then we have a shame attack that, oh no, I did something bad, and we go back and try to make everything better again, and go back to what I call our covert contracts, our giving to get, and trying to maintain our relationships through these covert contracts. So if I do this for you, then you'll do this for me. And it just keeps repeating. And when things don't go well for us, like when women aren't attracted to us, or where our partner doesn't want to have sex with us, or our partner's angry at us, or our boss passes us over for a promotion, we tend to just double down and do more of what we've already been doing that doesn't work, because that's the only paradigm we know. It's the only roadmap we have. So that's kind of a pretty big nutshell of what nice guy syndrome is all about.
Yeah, that resonates.
You're nodding your head a couple times.
It's amazing, like the covert contracts and some of these words that you've offered that allowed me to see how I tried to just meet other people's needs, and rather than having the vulnerability or the courage to ask for having my own met, and actually, be more internally directed and make it all about other people. And then, man, the amount of resentment that I've felt boil up in virtually every single relationship. And actually, that's been one of the biggest indicators for me when I'm falling back into my nice guy patterns, is observing that resentment in me.
Good clue.
Yeah, I found so. And I'm curious if you could go back to that man. You've said you've been really kind of uncovering this for 3 decades now. The man who was developing this and who first wrote that book, is there anything that you'd tell him that you didn't know about the emotional or even spiritual cost of being a nice guy?
Well, that's a good question. I'm trying to think of a couple ways to reply to that and frame it. The cost is one of the costs is looking back at past behavior, going, part of me say, I wish I'd done that different. But I also look at it and go, well, if I hadn't done it exactly that way, you and I wouldn't be talking right now. I might not have written a book. I might not. So I really don't live with regret. But I've made some messes in my life. I've made some relationship messes. I've burdened myself down unnecessarily with certain things. Sometimes relationships, sometimes financial issues. And really what I would come back to is saying living with integrity, even when it's hard, even when it's unpopular, even when it involves loss of things that are important to you. One of my mantras is sometimes you have to give up the things you love to get the things you want. And that involves a lot of integrity and a lot of willingness to go through what's difficult. And so that's the piece I think that I've been learning about, the true cost of it. That every time I ignored my intuition, every time I tried to fix something, and maybe thinking especially in terms of relationship, after I got divorced for the second time in my late 40s, I got out in the dating world and decided I was going to learn how to date and do it better than I'd ever done it. I always use nice guy seduction to get a girlfriend, and I'd sit down next to her in class and try to make an impression on her and raise my hand and answer all the questions to the teacher or professor to look smart. I might, talk to her and ask her a lot of stuff about her and offer to do something for her. And if she liked me, well, I'd just keep doing that. And even if she wasn't a good fit, I didn't know how to get a girlfriend. So, and I didn't want to lose what I had. So I'd stay. I was married twice to 2 women for a total of 25 years. I should not have dated either one more than 3 dates. There were enough warning signs going in. Now, they're not bad people, but they just weren't a good match for me. But because, I tried so hard to get them to like me, I wasn't asking myself, do I like them? Do I like who they are? Are they a good match for me? Are they a good fit? So it's one thing that nice guys tend to ignore, and I found that out in the dating world, is that I realized I had to become a better picker and a better ender to have what I wanted relationship-wise. And looking back on it, probably most every relationship I've been in my lifetime, probably with easily all of them within the first 3 months, there were significant warning signs, yellow flags, red flags, that instead of me going, what does this tell me about their nature? And how does that fit into my life? I would try to fix it. Talk them down, talk them through, talk them over, get everything back to good. Yeah. And just ignore, the fact that, wait a minute, that's not a good thing. That's not a good sign. Them ghosting me is not a good thing. And then coming back a few days later saying, oh, I'm sorry, I still want to see you. Or them accusing me of something I hadn't done, or their jealousy or insecurity, or their severe money issues, things that I just always thought, well, we can fix these things. No, I found that how you find them is how they are. And, you think you're fixing shit until 3 years later, 5 years later, 7 years later, they're still problematic people because that's their nature. I would overlook that stuff and always think, I can fix it. I can make it better. And I always knew, again, within 3 months, the problems always showed up. And then typically within the first, say, 3 years of my long-term relationship, it became obvious the women's heels were dug in. They weren't going to work at things anymore. Don't expect anything more of them. They became like an anchor that I was trying to drag along. And then typically I'd stay about 7 more years and then act out in some way that, then I look like the bad guy. And so looking back on that, yeah, I think I'd say when your gut says they're not a good fit, honor that. And I've applied that in many other ways, not just relationship with women. I've learned that, whether it's business ventures, put people that work for me, just experiences in life. I've really learned a lot more effectively what to say yes to and what to say no to. But back then, one thing about nice guys, I read a quote a while back that something went along the line of something like, the core of most people's suffering is that they say yes when they'd rather say no, and they say no when they'd prefer to say yes. That's nice guys. We're saying no when we really want to say yes, and we're saying yes when we really should be saying no. And so if we can get those things more aligned, say yes to the yeses, no to the nos, life works better. Now, it can be challenging. People may not always be happy with our yes or our no. But that's okay if we're not worried about making them happy. And so another piece I've really been focusing on lately, especially with a lot of my clients, but myself as well, is learning to be okay with people being unhappy with me, being hurt, being disappointed, being angry at me. Really working at getting okay with that, because then I can just be me, and they can figure out, their side of that. And if they're unhappy with me, well, that's their issue. If they're disappointed with me, that's their issue. If I've done something wrong, I can take accountability. But if I'm just being me and living my life on my terms, and they're unhappy with that, well, that's their problem, not mine. And again, I'm still caring and receptive and a good listener and want to understand what's going on, but my nervous system doesn't go into hyper overdrive like it used to. I got to fix that now. I got to fix it now. I got to make it better. Now I just watch my nervous system when it wants to do that, and I just take a few breaths and go, okay, they'll get over it. And they usually do. So yeah, there's maybe a long answer to the question, but yeah, there's that integrity of truly paying attention to red flags and yellow flags in life and asking them, what do they mean? And rather than trying to fix them, get them better, it's just be the noticer and the watcher of it, and then walk away if we need to.
I love that. And I think for me, like I mentioned earlier, because that's something I'm still confronting internally and with many of the men I work with too. I know there'll be a lot of people listening, nodding their heads as well as they're hearing you speak. And I think for me, that's been really representative of my external compass versus an internal compass. And I think I spent most of my life trying to make my external environment safe. By pleasing everybody and by yesing or saying the no's when somebody else wants to hear that, but getting so lost from my own internal compass that I don't even trust myself anymore. I don't even trust myself to honor what I want to do. And I think resentment is such a wonderful indicator as that's
you mentioned that good. You want to dive into resentment?
Let's lean into that.
Yeah. So okay, you tell me. And we'll do a little therapy here. All right. Tell me the situations where you're most likely to get resentful And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take those back to your covert contracts. So where does your resentment tend to show up?
I think the biggest places it still tends to show up is in my intimate relationship. And those could be little things. I'm actually just even getting better at noticing it showing up, because often it used to just bubble up until it would explode, and then resentment would be up here, more violent resentment. But I'm getting better at noticing it in the small ways. So that could be, in doing the dishes when I don't want to,
Yeah.
or just doing little tasks around the house. And rather than doing it to contribute, I'm feeling even resent within those micro moments, or making a decision.
Now, if you were getting laid for every time you did the dishes, you probably wouldn't have resentment. But
Right.
but probably you're not getting, your return on investment for doing them. The return you thought you might get. Even
Right.
appreciated and
Even the little bit of recognition, to your point there, like sometimes, and that's when I really have to catch myself, because fuck, if I got laid for everything I did, that'd be I'd
right? Yeah.
life would be wonderful. But that, obviously that's not the dynamic. And what, even those little moments, that's the more subtle piece, is like catching myself. Oh, do I just want her to acknowledge me in these little things? And oh, well, she didn't even come back and acknowledge that I just spent the last half hour doing this thing, or the last 2 hours doing this thing for our relationship. And that's, those are the more subtle pieces of resentment that I'd start to notice.
Good catch. Because that's really because I'm a marriage therapist by training. My doctorate said marriage and family therapy. So I've worked with a lot of couples. I've been in a few long-term relationships myself. And whether it's resentment, unmet expectations, compromises that weren't really compromises, they were caving. You gave up when you didn't really want to. Little breaches of trust. Those things are all like bricks that build up in a relationship over time, and they turn into this wall. And most couples don't know how to get through those bricks, and that's probably why many relationships end over time. But probably a number end because maybe those people really weren't a very good match, and they just tried to make it work, like I've done in some of my relationships. But a lot of times it's not that they're a bad match. They just let too many of those bricks build up over time until basically the only kind of sex or relationship couples having is what I call hall sex. It's what therapists refer to as hall sex, which is every time you pass each other in the hall, you say, fuck you, fuck you. That's a marriage therapist joke. And you used to like that person, right? You liked them enough to, have sex with them, move in with them, maybe get married to them. Now it's just fuck you, because all of the bricks that have built up over time. Okay, where those resentments come from, a quote that I really love. I'm going to talk about covert contracts. A quote from Neil Strauss, who's the author of The Game. He says, unexpressed expectations are premeditated resentments. I love that. Unexpressed expectations are premeditated resentments. So you're doing the dishes with an unexpressed expectation. She'll notice and appreciate me. She'll just walk up and lean over my shoulder and say, oh, you're such a sweetheart. Thank you. Mm-hmm. That's your unexpressed expectation. When she doesn't walk in and lean over and what? I did all this and she doesn't even appreciate it. I'm not even asking her to have sex. I just want her to notice and appreciate it, right? But here's the thing. One of the things I've seen with nice guys, we'll still come back to covert contracts, is that often from that place of emotional neediness, of wanting to be approved of, validated, liked, loved, desired, right? Told you're a good guy. That's actually an empty little boy needy place that we're expecting our woman to come be a mommy and praise us and tell us good job. Oh, good job. You did the dishes. Most women don't want to be their partner's mommy. They don't want that needy little boy to say, approve of me, like my pee-pee, tell me I did good. And they're not rejecting us or even unappreciative of the fact that we did the dishes. What they can feel from a mile away is our covert contract. our neediness, our unexpressed expectation of how they're supposed to respond. And if they do respond to it, they're not doing us any favors because they're perpetuating our little boy neediness and them being the nice mommy that tells us we're being a good boy. They don't want that for you. They don't want that for them. But we guys don't get that. We nice guys don't get it. We think, oh, she just rejected me, or she didn't appreciate me, or she didn't want to have sex with me. No, she just did not want us to hook up the emotional needy hose and start sucking the life out of her. So she had to be the approving mommy. Another quote I love. This is from one of my No More Mr. Nice Guy certified coaches, another Canadian, Wally Wallace. He wrote a book called Sipping Fear, Pissing Confidence. Great title of a book. He and I were talking about it before he published it. He said, I think I'm going to change the name. And I said, no, don't change the name. Sipping Fear, Pissing Confidence. It's mainly written towards addiction and men, but really it covers everything. It's one of the best books I've ever read for men in general. And I've read a lot of men's books. But there's a line in that book, and I was listening to it while driving in my car a couple of years ago, driving from California up to Seattle, and I had it on CarPlay, listening to the audiobook. And a line came up, and I'm paraphrasing it. I'm not getting it exactly right. But the line is something like this. A man does not mature until he quits seeking the approval of a woman. And I'm driving in my car trying to hit, replay. So I pulled off the freeway, Interstate 5, pull over to just listen to that. And I got home and immediately ordered the print version of the book because I wanted to see that in print, because it just resonated so deeply that a man does not mature until he quits seeking the approval of a woman. Now, that's basically what he's talking about, is masculine initiation, where our forefathers would have come and gotten us at 12, taken us out of the nursery, away from mommy, cut the umbilical cord, cut the apron strings, took us out, put us in a life-threatening situation, carried us through that, got us through, anointed us, put us in the tribe of men, and now the women come seeking our approval because we have what they want. We are now the solid man, the warrior, the provider, the protector, and the feminine's going to be really attracted to that. As long as we're in there doing the dishes, hoping, mommy likes us and approves of us, we're not a warrior, right? We're not initiated men. We're little boys trying to get mommy's approval. So where that's coming from for nice guys is in the covert contracts. And I talk about that in No More Mr. Nice Guys. And a lot of guys have told me that's their biggest takeaway from the book. I think it's my biggest takeaway in my own nice guy recovery, to really get aware of them. But to even give it more clearly than it is in the book, there's 3 primary covert contracts for nice guys. And again, these are those unexpressed expectations that lead to premeditated resentments. Covert contract number 1, they're all if-then propositions. They're all fundamentally, subtly manipulative, and they're all covert, often unconscious. But number 1 is, if I'm a good guy, then I'll be liked and loved, and the woman I desire will desire me back. So if I do the dishes, I'll get laid, right? So it's manipulative, and if I'm a good guy, what does that even mean? And then I'll be liked and loved. Well, not everybody's going to like us. Not everybody's going to love us. Not everybody's going to want to go to bed with us. But we have that contract. I'm a good guy. How come the women don't like me? How come they're not attracted to me? How come they don't want to be with me? How come my woman doesn't want to have sex anymore? Well, the truth is probably because we're an insecure, needy little boy using covert contracts to get a woman's approval, and they don't want to give us approval as a good mommy. So there's covert contract number 1. Covert contract number 2 is that if I read your mind and meet your needs without you having to ask, then you'll read my mind and meet my needs without me having to ask. Remember those unexpressed expectations? Oh, you'll read my mind and say, oh, good job. Thanks for doing the dishes. I so appreciate you. I love you so much. You're the best husband in the world. Now let's go. Let me suck your dick, right? That's the unexpressed expectations. And again, we don't really read their mind. We're giving to them what we think they want. We're giving to them what we need to give, not what they need to receive. And they can't read our minds, and they don't know that we're expecting them to. And to really top it off, we nice guys are terrible receivers, right? We're not good at asking for what we want. We're not good at surrounding ourselves with people who want to give to us. We're not good at making our needs a priority. And when people do try to give to us, we don't let them. We make it difficult. I've had pretty much every woman in my life has said, Robert, you're difficult to give to. Well, okay, I better pay attention to that if I want to receive from not only women, but from the universe, right? I've got to become a good receiver. But nice guys tend to believe, because of that early emotional beliefs we inaccurately internalized as children, I'm bad for having needs, or everybody else's needs are more important than mine, or I have to give to you first before you can give to me, or if I get my needs met, you're going to be mad at me, or I owe you something. So we're terrible at receiving. And so that's a piece I've been working on the last 20 plus years, still working on it to this day. Yeah. Third covert contract. If I do everything right, then I'll have a smooth, problem-free life. Now, this is kind of a Peter Panish view of the world. I don't want to grow up. I just want to be Peter Pan. The world is not smooth and problem-free. It's challenging. It's difficult. That's why men need masculine initiation, to learn how to get comfortable feeling uncomfortable, to welcome and embrace hard times and grow from them. But without a masculine initiation, instead we go into a covert contract. Well, I'll just do everything right. I'll say the right thing. I'll be perfectionist. I won't risk anything that will lead to failure, looking foolish. Then I'll have a smooth, problem-free life. Everything will go well. But it doesn't. And all that usually just leads us to us underperforming or being perfectionists that don't really do everything perfectly. There's no reward. There's no gold stars in heaven for you doing everything right. But again, it's that immature little boyish mentality that if I'm a good boy, if I do everything right, then I'll get all the approval and validation I want. Okay, so here we are. We've been living by this roadmap. You and I both have. Maybe a couple of your listeners have been, they're going, I do that, I do that, I do that. Okay, so what happens when we've kept our side of those covert contracts? Now, remember, we're not only the player, we're the referee, we're the scorekeeper. We've got the scoreboard up there. Well, I'm a good guy. I'm better than him. I'm not a jerk like him. Or I gave to her, or I did that. I did the dishes. Oh, and I've done everything right. I'm not a bad man. And we're keeping score, and we're going, wait a minute. How come I don't get that promotion? How come I don't get those words of approval? How come I don't get laid? How come girls don't even talk to me? How come my wife never wants to have sex with me anymore? Right? How come I'm not wealthier than I am? What's wrong with this picture? And all that does is lead to resentment, frustration. I've kept my side of the contract. Women haven't kept their side. My wife hasn't kept her side. My boss hasn't kept it. God hasn't kept his side of the contract, right? And so that's where the frustration and resentment builds up. So people ask, well, how do I know if I'm living with covert contracts? And the answer is really simple. It's because if you have frustration and resentment, even rage, you have covert contracts. You have unexpressed expectations that are leading to premeditated resentments. And so that's where we go to work. So you go to work on, why am I feeling frustrated? Why am I feeling upset that she didn't notice me? Why? Get curious and ask yourself, what were my unexpressed expectations? What were my covert contracts? What was I giving or doing? And what was I expecting in return? And realize people can't read our minds. They don't know what a contract is if we haven't told them. And again, the world isn't smooth and easygoing. And we got to practice being good receivers, because actually what I've found is that the world around me is actually wanting to bless me and give to me all the time. But if I don't notice it, if I don't let it in, or if it's not in the way that I was wanting it, it's just going to wash right over me. And my kind of like my receptor cells in my nervous system don't even let that stuff come and latch on, because in my mind, well, it's not what I wanted, or I'm not good enough, or I'm going to be in trouble, or I'm going to owe something. We've got to really practice letting go of the covert contracts, making our needs a priority, asking people for what we want, surrounding ourselves with people and situations who want to give to us, and we have to practice letting them, saying yes, walk through the open doors. So this is the process I'm still working on, 30 some years after beginning this process back in that 12-step group.
Yeah, I can relate to all three of those ones that you expressed, and I really loved that quote you mentioned about the man up in Canada, and it made me think of Iron John, the part where he has to steal the key from the mother.
Yeah,
You
go
know,
steal
and
it under mom's
go
pillow.
steal it out of the pillow.
Gotta have the hairy man to go help the little boy steal the key from under mom's pillow. Yeah, if we're still seeking mommy's approval, we're still just little boys.
Yes.
And there's a
Yeah.
lot of little boys walking the planet. And I think even more so, as I look at, and this is not a criticism, but I look at millennials and Gen Z, and the reason I say it's not a criticism is that the men of my generation have not been initiating the young men of the millennial gen. My son's going to be 40 in August, so he's a millennial. But I look at the Gen Z, and most of these younger generations, they've had everything pushed to them. They grew up with technology, on the internet, playing video games, watching videos, having Netflix pushed to them, YouTube pushed to them, social media pushed to them, porn pushed to them, Uber Eats pushed to them. A young man doesn't actually have to do anything nowadays. Everything just gets pushed. So he's never learned to meet challenge. He's never learned to deal with difficulty. One of the things that I actually see, I've got a 19-year-old stepson, is it seems like the generation raised, on the internet, their parents put a cell phone in their hands, when they were 2 weeks old to entertain them, is that, for example, nobody wants to work for anybody anymore. Everybody wants to be a digital nomad, which is cool. I'm a digital nomad. I haven't gotten a paycheck since 1988. But there's kind of this thing that nobody wants to really have a job. They want to, build their own click funnels, create their own lead magnets, sell their own products, which is great. I do all of that too. But you know what? I learned so much discipline and structure in my life from having bosses, from having expectations I had to meet, from skills I had to learn, from deadlines I had to meet, from bosses that were going to take me out to the woodshed for a discussion if I didn't get the job done. And I think that was part of my own initiation, great value. When I quit being a minister several years ago, another lifetime, I already had my doctorate in marriage and family therapy, so I wanted to start my own private practice. And I was trying to find a job as a therapist, and I wasn't finding a job, so I did start my own private practice. I thought, well, if I'm not making any money doing nothing, I might as well start my own private practice and not make any money doing that. But I got a job installing Murphy beds, those beds that fold out of the wall, from a small company, small family-owned company. I learned to use power tools, how to install cabinetry, how to put things together. I learned how to, measure twice, cut once. I learned how to do the job right the first time, so you don't have to go back and fix your mistakes. I learned so much from having, caring, but really, structured boss who had certain expectations that I would not have learned if I was just kind of being my own boss. So without picking on, the millennials and Gen Zs, most of the younger generations have not been in many situations where there was an outside structure imposed on them that they had to actually rise up and meet expectations. And so many of us men are just comfortable with just everything getting pushed to us. And so we never really do get out of the nursery. There's nothing really challenging us in life. And so if we do meet a challenge in life, we just tend to revert back to smoking dope, binging on Netflix, eating, playing video games, World of Warcraft till 2 a.m, jerking off to porn, because we just go back to, just scrolling on our phones, just on Instagram for hours at a time, YouTube, and again, all those things are fine, but so many of us men have never been initiated into that challenging world of the masculine. So we just keep going back to the easy stuff, and kind of going back to our relationships with women. They don't find that very attractive. They don't find it very attractive when we're just being little boys hanging out in the nursery. They want to see us out there putting a fucking dent in the cosmos. They want to see us living at our edge, leaning into challenge, connecting deeply with other men, just really making a fucking difference to where we don't need their approval. Then they're going, oh, I like that. I'm attracted to that. That makes me wet, right? That's what the feminine is looking for. But again, if we're just kind of hanging out going the easy route, so a lot of men just go, oh, women aren't attracted to me. well, they're not attracted to the little boy who's not willing to lean into challenge. So that's really where a lot of the work I do with men is both bringing love and acceptance, but also a big stick to men saying, listen, there's a reason that's not working for you. Are you willing to take some big steps with assistance, with support, and go do some things that challenge you?
Yeah, I think that's essential. And it's, I think of that quote, hard times create hard men create easy times create soft men, that
Yeah.
kind of thing. And, you know, it's easy. There's no shortage of ways to get quick dopamine hits these days. And I think without the absence or in the absence of having that vision, going out and, you know, having a dent in the cosmos and being clear and rooted from that place, it's so much easier to pursue that next quick dopamine hit. And I really think what you're saying too around like initiation, the loss of rites of passage, the loss of brotherhood and connection, and having the mirror who can call out your bullshit, because it's so easy to blame and criticize and judge everything and everyone for why your life is where it's at. And to have those mirrors in your life who can say, hey, man, you're just making a bullshit list of excuses for why you're staying stuck in your life. So I'd love to hear you say a little bit more around the power of initiation or modern rites of passage, or, you know, connections with men who can call you on your shit, and what that can do for a man to step up and take charge in his life.
Yeah. You know, I'll answer this in a few different ways. One of the things I've said is that whenever I've gotten laid the most in life, it was because I had a coach and or a trainer. Right? I was working on me, right? Either coach, therapist, working on my stuff in life, and or a trainer. You know, I'm getting to the gym. You know, I'm getting strong. Um, Something about challenging ourselves makes us really attractive to the feminine. And when I speak of the feminine, I'm talking about the energetic, you know, women, dogs, cats, babies, money, opportunity, adventure. So getting laid can be a lot of stuff. You know, I got invited to go to Japan back in April to speak at an entrepreneurs conference. So I got all my expenses paid, you know, flying business class from Seattle to Japan, staying at beautiful hotels to speak for an hour, right? So I got laid, right? That was, but you know what? It took a lot of work and a lifetime to get me to that place where those kind of invitations come my way. So one is if we're the whole idea of the lone wolf, I mean, so many men are so isolated from other men. I mean, just statistically, almost you listen to almost any podcast today where men are talking about the state of men, you're going to hear those statistics about the degree of loneliness in men, lack of meaningful relationship, depression, suicide, health issues. Men are just so isolated. And, you know, there's a reason. The whole myth of the lone wolf, I'll go it alone. You know, I'll figure it out on my own. I'll watch a YouTube video. I'll listen to an audio book. You know, our ancestors did not go it alone. Our ancestors survived in tribal times as hunters, gatherers, warriors, because we were part of a tribe, part of a team. And, you know, if there was a dude that went it alone, he didn't live long enough to pass on his DNA for that to become part of humans. So we men need this. And probably up until maybe even just 60 years ago, men had their teams, their squads of men. Whether as men went to the workplace, they were primarily men. Men had their men's organizations and men's clubs. Men went through the military. Maybe men played sports, but men were around men. And you go back much further than that, in an agrarian society, our grandfathers grew up around their grandfathers, around their dad, their grandfathers, their uncles, their cousins, and they were out doing guys things with guys. And I'm not trying to preach going back to rigid gender roles. But what I do know is men tend to perform more highly around other men, and women actually tend to do better around other women. You put boys and girls actually in a classroom together, and the performance of both boys and girls goes down. Right? You put boys in a classroom with boys and girls in a classroom with girls, and their performance tends to go up. Right? So our ancestors always have been around other men. Nowadays, the workplace, of course, is, you know, actually more women than men, if you go by the statistics. There's no real place that men go anymore, even the military. You know, again, I'm not saying that there shouldn't be women in the workplace or in the military, but there's just no place that men go be with men. And because we've not been initiated in any way, because like Iron John talks about it, like Robert Bly talks about it in Iron John, when the men would come and just take the boys out, drag them out, do the initiation. The women are crying and screaming, "Don't take my little boy." Then they once soon as they're gone, the women go, "How'd I do? Was that convincing?" The women knew that the initiation was part of the essentialness of their sons becoming men and the survival of the tribe, right? And the well-being of the women of the tribe. And again, we're not going back to tribal times, but we still need clearer processes that get little boys out of the nursery today. Because most little boys grow up and it makes sense that they're programmed to please women. It probably has always been that way, even in times of initiation. Because when you're a little child, your caregiver, typically a woman, is your survival. If your caregiver, is not caring for you, meeting your needs in timely and consistent ways, you're going to die. So it makes sense that little boys put great value on the connection with their mothers, their female caregivers. Then we go to elementary school, there's more women. So even to get from second to third grade, not only do you have to learn your reading, writing, arithmetic, but how to please a female teacher, right? So it makes sense that boys are hanging out in the nursery, trying to please women, don't want to upset the woman. That's kind of the golden rule of manhood nowadays. Don't piss off the woman. And because there's no process to take him out of that at about 12 years old. Now, honestly, I don't know that I have the answer. I think there's a lot of good people are recognizing that the issue. Programs are being developed, kind of programs to help fathers. In fact, I just had an email exchange with my agent about me writing a new book. We're kind of got a working title of Guys Night Out, just men's need to connect deeply with other men. And my agent is talking about, part of how could we address even fathers, how the assistance they need in kind of raising their sons up in the world that we live in with social media and toxic masculinity and everything about boys being bad. So luckily, people are recognizing this need for initiation. There's no right way to do it. But anything that helps boys or men get comfortable feeling uncomfortable, maybe leaning into our fear of death while being supported by other masterful men, that's initiation, whatever that might look like. So that's an essential for boys to be happy, to be productive, to grow up to happy, productive, secure men, for us to be able to attract the feminine, women, money, opportunity, adventure, to let go of the people pleasing, to let go of our covert contracts. We have what the feminine wants. The feminine's going to come to us. So we're going in a good direction with that. And the challenging part is getting the message out to men. And I love that there's so many great coaches, podcasters, people addressing the issue, is that I found with so many men, if they've never experienced a deep, vulnerable connection with another man or group of men, they don't know how good that feels. I didn't know how good that felt for many years in my life till I was in a men's group, like I said, 30 years ago. And I probably went 2 years in that men's group, met every Saturday morning before I ever went to breakfast with them afterwards, and then planned a camping trip. And then later with some other buddies started taking road trips to go to baseball games around the country. And then, I didn't know how good it felt to just be able to go connect deeply with men, have fun, be stupid, be silly, tell the same damn joke over and over again, say that's what she said for the umpteenth time, but to also get real and be vulnerable and talk about what's going on. And I've seen it. I do workshops here in my office, small groups, 8 guys for a weekend. I've got a men's membership program. We had an annual conference last year in Playa del Carmen, Mexico. And it's this secret sauce of when men take the risk, get around other men, start being vulnerable, start sharing things they'd never shared, like I did in that 12-step group years ago. And then they go, wow, this feels good. I like this. I'm going to keep doing it. And then we start trusting men and letting them support us, letting them be there for us. We give a shit about them and let them give a shit about us. We let them take the big stick out and hit us upside the head when we need it. Bring some structure, some discipline, iron sharpening iron. We need that, and it feels really good. I work exclusively with men nowadays. I have for the last 20 years. One of the reasons I do is I love working with men. But like I said, I love being able to take the big stick out and say, what the fuck were you thinking? You know, and they go, thanks. Nobody's ever said it to me like that, with love, right? And we need it. And it actually feels good to be held accountable by other men we know care about us. So that's the mission that I'm on. When I launched Integration Nation 2 years ago, I was actually I was in my mid 60s. I'm 69. And I was thinking, well, maybe I'll consider semi-retirement. And it dawned on me. Now, if I'm going to do this, I got to get all in. And I'm at a place in my life, and I have a visibility, a platform, a reputation, you know, millions of people who've heard of me, that why would I walk away from being able to have the biggest impact that I can have on men right now? And really what I see maybe my biggest impact moving forward is helping men find those places of belonging with other men. Now, here's the beauty. When I went on my book tour for No More Mr. Nice Guy 20-something years ago, I did a lot of interviews, TV, radio, newspaper. A lot of people asked me, Robert, do I see a worldwide men's movement coming? I said, I don't think so, because I don't think there's like one issue that men will rally around, maybe dad's rights or something, but I didn't think that was even a big enough issue to have a revolution of sorts. But I was probably right to one way, but I was wrong. I actually do see a worldwide men's movement. You and I are part of it, actually, right now, what we're doing. But here's what I'm seeing. I see men, almost in droves, going and finding dojos and doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I see men going to 12-step programs and finding a stag group to help them work on their addiction to alcohol or gambling or sex or narcotics. I see men going to their church divorce recovery group while they're going through a breakup. I see men going to pick up boot camps to learn how to pick up women, but in the process, they're going out with 4 or 5 guys as a team, camaraderie, enjoying each other while they learn how to talk to women. And then what I see happening is that you meet a guy at your dojo, your 12-step group, your divorce recovery group, your pickup group, and they say, hey, have you read this book? Have you listened to this podcast? Do you know this coach? Have you heard of that? And now all of a sudden there's this great cross-pollination of men. And what they didn't know consciously was when they went looking to do Brazilian jiu-jitsu or become a gym bro or find a divorce support group or 12-step group or pickup group or a men's consciousness raising group or whatever, what they were looking for was tribe. They knew it in their DNA. It's wired into our cellular nervous system. We need men. And I think men are beginning to cross the threshold in lots of different ways. It may not look like a worldwide men's movement, but I see it because I've got a perspective where I see men like, some guy will go to Brazilian jiu-jitsu, start talking to some guy, they hit it off together. They go out, have a beer, have a coffee, whatever, go out and do plant medicine, whatever, and then they go, have you listened to Huberman Lab? If you listen to Chris Williamson, if you listen to Stephen Bartlett, if you read, No More Mr. Nice Guy, if you read Iron John, and all of a sudden there's this movement, and then they go online and they find men's coaches and podcasts and men's programs and retreats. And I'm going, this is good shit. It's happening. Men are seeking tribe. When I went looking 30 plus years ago, really all I could find was the mythopoetic movement, right, based on Robert Bly, Michael Meade. And I went out in the woods. I beat a drum. I said ho with the talking stick. And, there were other things. I think the Sterling Weekend already existed. Mankind Project already existed. But this is pretty much really early days of the internet, pre-internet. And so unless somebody word of mouth, your best friend said, hey, man, I did this weekend workshop. You should go with me. Nowadays, these weekends, Mankind Project, so many others, They're out there. They're ubiquitous. They're in every country. And so men are finally getting to have that depth of connection, which is beautiful because most of us have a father wound. Many of us got bullied by older kids when we were young. And we don't trust men. And so to cross that threshold of opening up, getting vulnerable, trusting men, quit seeking the approval of women, quit going it alone, that's a big transition. And I'm as excited as I can be to see it.
Yeah, man, it is happening, and I see it also from my vantage point, and I resonate and love everything that you just shared here. And what I've found in my connection with men, like one, I didn't even realize how much I needed that until
Yeah.
I had, and like that resonates so much. And then the depth, the potency, it shortens the gap from when I fall flat on my face and when I pick myself back up again.
100%.
And I think there's, one thing about that I find is like, if you're a heterosexual male, there's no charge there, and so if a man just calls me straight up on my bullshit, I'm not stuck in shame or needing to please or any of these things. So he can call me that and invite me to a higher standard.
Yeah, but if a woman did the same thing, you go, "Oh, she doesn't like me, or
Right.
she's never gonna have sex with me. I better make it better."
Right.
So you're right, because there isn't that charge. I call it, we're not trying to maintain the possibility of availability that we do with all
Mhm.
women. Yeah, and you know what? There's nothing feels better than a man who cares about you, who's working on his own shit, say, "Wait a minute. Take a look at that." And you go, "You're right. I did know that. I'm glad you called it out because I don't like." We'll go down. We'll go take the easy path if it's left
Mhm.
to us. And yeah, we need good men in our life to keep us challenging. It feels good. It feels good.
It hits the center of the soul. Yeah, there's this squirmy voice in my head that can find every reason and every justification to sit down and scroll or to do all the other things that I know are not nurturing me and helping me be the man that I need to be able to step up into my full potential. So,
Yeah, but if you made a commitment to a group of guys to say,
yes.
"Okay, for 30 days, I'm not looking at porn," or "For 30 days, I'm not scrolling social media," or "For 30 days, I'm getting to the gym," and you've made that commitment, and maybe they're even asking you to check in with them on a
Hmm.
daily basis, you're fucking gonna show up, and then you're gonna get to that 30 days and go, 30 more.
Yeah, let's go.
That felt good. That felt good. Let's go.
You'll invite other people into it too. You start
Yeah.
calling other people and, hey, this is what I'm doing. Come on out with me. Let's go to the gym together. Let's go on the hike together. And then where you started getting that accountability, you start being the one that can also lead by example and hold others accountable. And it is a real chain reaction.
Yeah, and another level of that, when I mentioned, like, I do a workshop here every couple months, and Friday night, 3 hours of a weekend workshop, we're just introducing ourselves, but talking about why we're here. Why'd we
Mhm.
spend a few $1,000s, take a weekend off, come to Mexico and work with me? And all it takes is for one guy to open up. I'm going through a painful divorce. I keep saying I'm going to quit porn, but I keep going back to it. I feel like a total loser because I don't want to talk to women. Whatever. Or I can't keep an erection. I come to just one guy revealing himself, and now all of a sudden, every other guy starts just putting it out there.
100%.
And then all of a sudden, I tell these guys, "You're going to get here Friday night." And you're looking around, you don't know each other. You're going to, who is this guy? We're going to evaluate each other, put each other in a hierarchy. We think, I'm going to like him. I don't like him. I wish he hadn't come. He's a jerk. He reminds me of someone I used to know. I hated that guy. We're going to do that. And we're going to find justification for our internal projections. And I said, and by Sunday afternoon, you guys are going to feel like a bunch of frat brothers that have known each other for 20 years. And they get to Sunday afternoon, they've done the work, they've been revealing, they went out and had fun Saturday night, ate together, got to know each other even better than they did here in this room. Sunday, they've got nicknames for each other. They're joking with each other. They know each other's vulnerabilities. They saw people challenge themselves, have a success, and they're talking about how they can stay connected. And I had a group come here in April that had a group of strangers came the April before, got to know each other, stayed connected, wanted to come back again. I did a workshop 2 weeks ago. Two of the guys in there met at a workshop 7 years ago and came back to one. One reached out to the other, said, "Let's go do it again." A guy in another workshop was saying 7 years later, the group from his workshop, they still talk weekly.
Wow. Wow.
So when men find that, they just want it, and it just levels up every area of our life. When I got married 8.5 years ago to my present wife, Lupita, I was down here in Mexico. She's Mexican, didn't speak English. We were already having some struggles. She's a jealous Latina. Every time she accused me of something I hadn't done, I'm the self-righteous nice guy. I'm not bad. How don't accuse me of shit I haven't done, that was my covert contract. I'm a good guy. I'm not like all the Mexican macho men. You shouldn't accuse me of doing what they do. But I've done it. And so we were having problems, and I thought, I'm isolated. Another marriage is going to break if I don't. So I joined a men's program. I actually spoke at one of my workshops and said, I need a men's program. A guy in a program said, hey, I'm in this program with this guy who studied with David Data for the last 10 years ago. I'm in. So I did that like for 6 years. I'm attending one of their retreats coming up later this month. And at that time, I had maybe 1.5 good guy friends in my life. Now I know I have 30 to 50 men I could call middle of the night. They'd get on an airplane, fly down here, be here for me. They love me that much. They care about me that much. I was in Austin, Texas 3 weeks ago. Monday night, I organized a dinner with a group of guys in a men's entrepreneur group that I just joined. Didn't even know the guys. A couple of guys I did meet in Japan came. So 6 of us went and had dinner Monday night. Wednesday night in Austin, a guy I met at an Integration Nation meetup a year ago who loves my book. Every time I come to Austin, I've been 4 times in the last year or so, he has a dinner party at his house and invites all the men he knows in his men's program. And he's introduced me to so many guys. And so just a dozen guys just having dinner and hanging out. Friday night, men I met in my men's program and other friends I've just made in Austin from my trips there. A body worker I worked with, a videographer. We had a dinner at one of my buddies' house. 15 guys, barbecued, played music, just, shot the shit. So a town I don't even live in. Three nights, I'm out to dinner with 5 to 6 to 12 to 15 men that I did not have in my life 7, 8 years ago. Any of them I didn't have in my life a year ago. So I've just been building my tribe. I think a few months back when I was going to Austin for the 3rd time in 2024, my wife goes, you sure you don't have a girlfriend in Austin? I go, no, I got a lot of guy friends in Austin. And there's a lot of great interviewers there. I always get to do a lot of great in-person interviews in Austin. So, and so my wife she sees me when I get back. She knows I've been with men. She just sees that radiance, that energy, that strength, that king in me that she loves when I've been with men. So yeah, I'm a big fan. Build your tribe. It may take some work, but good news is it is so much easier to do today than it was 30 years ago.
Amen, man. Yeah. You got me excited. We have a retreat coming up this weekend. So I'm fired up. Yeah. We got 20 guys meeting out in the woods, and we got our own little cabins, and that moment where guys come in deer in the headlights, strangers, and you know what's on the other side because somebody comes in and kicks down the door. And I call that like leading with vulnerability. It becomes the living permission slip that gives every other man in that space the ability to just say, oh, fuck, me too. Me too, man.
I call it the secret sauce.
Yeah.
It really connects men because and after all those 20 guys introduce themselves, everybody there will see at least some part of themselves in the majority of the other guys there. And not to know we're not alone. Mm-hmm. We're not terminally unique. We spend so much time in our own heads that we just think everything we think is, normal or our little. Then we find out other guys go, oh, you struggle with that too? Oh, your life, even though it looks like it's good, there's actually problems. You're struggling financially, you're burned out, your woman's not treating you well. Yeah, me too. Let's talk. And then once we get that connection built with other men, all those other problems don't seem so big.
Yeah, it doesn't solve them.
Well, it often leads to some solutions. Right. But for example, I found when men come in complaining about their relationship with their partner, often she doesn't want to have enough sex, or she's angry all the time, or not in a good mood, whatever. I'll say, what's the rest of your life look like? How's your great cake? I mean, do you have good guy friends? Are you living your purpose? Are you leaning into challenge? Are you getting to the gym regularly? Do you surround yourself with people who love you and want to help you live your best life? I got work to do. When men go do that other work, all of a sudden, their partner may not have even changed dramatically, but they're not as resentful, frustrated, pissed off.
That's right.
They're going, okay, she's got her stuff. She's working on her stuff. Yeah, I'd like more sex, but you know what? We're not so resentful about that not working well because we're taking care of other stuff in the tribe of good men.
100%. And that creates second order change back in the relationship. And what I was thinking there too is like, it doesn't solve the problem, but it lifts the shame. And so no longer then are you stuck. It's like, okay, I'm back. I've got my agency back. I can lead the way. I can make the change. I'm not stuck in my shame that I'm the only one. I'm broken. All that bullshit that just keeps us stuck repeating the same goddamn pattern again and again. And it gives us that agency and the support to actually just make a shift and stop making excuses for our lives.
Exactly. Agency and support and just acceptance
Mm-hmm.
from other men who are perfectly imperfect, who have their own struggles. But it's so cool. Again, when you get that group of guys together, all our neuroses and defense mechanisms, sometimes they welcome people in, sometimes they push people away. We can be pretty nerdy, we can be pretty awkward. And it's funny, once people start opening up and revealing, just being themselves underneath all of that, you start liking people so much. And the day before, their nerdiness and defense mechanisms just put you off and you didn't even want to like them. Now you can't help but like them. And now you notice, yeah, they're still a nerd. They're still awkward. They're still whatever. But I just really like them. You passed all of that. It doesn't matter anymore.
Totally.
And that also means people can really like us in spite of our defense mechanisms, our nerdiness, our neuroses, our things that we've honed to keep people at a distance. People see past that too and start just loving us and liking us in spite of the fact that we make it difficult for them at times.
100%. And sometimes it's the rough edges that people are attracted to within us. People don't
Always.
love or trust perfect. So, I'm curious as I want to respect your time and close this off. When a man's no longer performing, as he's starting to tap into that place where he's living from a deep, authentic place that you've been talking about, what does that feel like inside of him? And what does that change about how he moves through the world?
That question you just asked is probably the most challenging question I've been struggling to answer. Mm-hmm. Both in terms of like marketing my own men's programs, both in terms of a book that a marketing agency I've been working with wants me to write. How do you help men feel that secret sauce, that depth of connection? You and I've been, there's men listening going, I don't even know what they're talking about.
Right.
And how do you describe to somebody who's never seen a sunset the beauty of a sunset? How do you describe to someone who's never tasted a banana what a banana tastes like? Somebody who's never looked at stars at night and pondered the expansiveness of the cosmos. How do you explain that existential feeling to somebody who's never been there? Honestly, I don't know. I don't know yet. Maybe I'll find the words. One of my favorite words is ineffable, trying to explain God, paradise, eternity. I don't know. Ineffable. Nobody's ever had the words for it. We use approximations of metaphor, of examples, or the kingdom of heaven is like, God is like the good father. But if we had shitty fathers, then God becomes a shitty father too. That's my view. Was my view of God forever. So what does it feel like when you open up, are vulnerable? What does that even mean, to be vulnerable? You tell somebody something that you don't like about yourself, that you'd rather not anybody else know, that you wish wasn't true, and that person just nods at you and looks like they understand and still accept you and think you're okay, and you hear them share shit that if you had that in your life, you'd be highly critical of yourself, but you're not highly critical of him when he shares it. And how do you explain just that depth of connection that you want that other person to be okay? And you actually accept they want you to be okay. You give a shit about them as they give a shit about you. I don't know that I have the words. I mean, I'm doing my best, to put it in words, but it is, I believe, ineffable that once you've experienced the secret sauce, you want more. You want to keep experiencing it. And yeah, many of us have had bad experiences with men. Maybe we, whether it be our dads, whether it be male teachers or coaches, maybe we've been abused or violated or, teased or bullied, or maybe we've joined men's groups that, they were toxic in themselves. And, maybe we just go, no, I'm just going to, go hole out in my room, go my own way. I don't want everything to do with women, men either. And, you know, and maybe for some men they'll never get past that. I don't know. I'm always optimistic. That's my nature. So how do you explain it? I don't know. If you can help me, I'm open to it, because I'd love to get better at explaining, in a marketing slogan, in a landing page, in a click funnel, in a lead magnet, in a podcast, in an interview. I'd love to get so good at explaining this and putting it in words that men just instinctively feel that warrior, that desire for connection rising in them, and they'll go, I don't know where I'm going to find it, but I'm going looking. And that's what's happened to me. Whenever I've gone looking, I didn't know where I'd find the connection with men. It always found me. Once I went looking, it found me. So all I can say to men is entertain the idea that connecting with men, my marketing team's calling that guys' night out, just going out and being with men and risking being real, open, vulnerable, talking about something that's not working in your life. Risk it and just see what happens. See what happens.
Amen. Yeah. I like your analogy of trying to describe a sunset or a sunrise to somebody that hasn't seen it, because that feels quite accurate. And I'll keep searching for the words myself. And if I land on any other gold, I'll pass it along to you.
Yeah.
But
we'll make this a team effort between all of us men out there that see the value of men's work and men having tribe.
Yeah, absolutely. Where can people find you? I know people are going to be listening and resonating a lot with.
I'm in Puerto Vallarta. They just come find me. Yeah, come on down.
Come down in winter.
Yeah. The winter time's the best time. It's getting hot and humid now. We had our first rain a couple days ago, and I'm headed to Seattle. drglover.com. It's under construction, just about done. But it's there, but it's going to look a lot better soon. drglover.com and integrationnation.net is my men's membership program. And then Dr. Glover Official on YouTube and Instagram. So those would be the places to find me.
Amazing. We'll make sure that they're all linked in the description. Thanks again for taking the time, man. I really appreciate it. And
Stu, this was fun. Thank you for the work you're doing up in the far corner of Canada that nobody even knows you exist or knows what time zone you're in. Thank you for the work you're doing, because we're a team. We're a tribe.
Hey, pleasure, man. To be continued.